How about that? Get to use this. Call to order the Oregon City Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee meeting for October 17th, 2024. Or do we have any? Oh, roll call, please. Sorry, Greg.
I would love to do a roll call. Joey Knopf.
Here.
Joyce Gifford.
Here.
Steve Williams.
Here.
Tim Lanehart.
Here.
Ken Wooster.
Here.
And Aaron McClellan. Here. Excellent. Thank you, guys.
I feel like you didn't just go off the list. You just went down the road.
I sure did. Next time I'll surprise you and bobble around.
It appears I'm observant, and it appears we have no public comment this evening.
You are correct.
Okay, so we'll start with approval of our August 22nd meeting minutes. I assume everybody had an opportunity to take a look at those. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve minutes for August 22nd.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Anyone opposed to approval of those minutes? I see no one in objection. Okay. So, the next part of our general business is the cemetery fees check-in. There's Aaron online. Cemetery fees check-in.
I'll take that one just for the kind of the introduction, and we'll have a discussion on how you'd like to proceed with that. So If you remember, earlier in the spring, we did a tour out at the cemetery. We kind of talked about our operations out there, some of the services that we offer, and one of the big challenges that we have is that our fees have not been updated in quite some time. So currently, as it sits today, when we look at the budget for the cemetery is subsidized about 50% between the services that we charge for and 50% from the general fund. So what we've done in the time since then, we've had 2 internal meetings with the city manager's office, with finance, and a variety of folks throughout the city to talk about some different policy options. And what we've started to create is a new price list, and it basically covers 3 options. One would be full cost recovery. We recover 100% of the costs that we have in the cemetery, and essentially taking the cemetery to a true enterprise fund, where it's almost like a business, and it's running off of the fees that we take in from services. Obviously, that is a large price increase, but we did want to show that as an option. But we also recognize that the cemetery has scenic value and historic value for the sections that are not currently active, that are more, the historic cemetery side, the memorial side. So we also created 2 choices that are more in line with a 25% fee increase, which would make up the difference for the 20 years since the last time that we updated those fees, and then getting to a 75% cost recovery and 25% subsidy. So what we'd like to do is discuss kind of next steps, and what we're thinking is that we come to you in January with that information, with that data, to share these different options, review the numbers, and then provide a recommendation to City Commission to move forward. Like I said, we've taken these kind of through our internal review, and we're about at the point where we want to start sharing with the public and with the commission, but we want to get your input first. And before we do that, wanted to check and see if there was any information that you want to see in that.
Okay.
I'll open that up to discussion.
Tim?
I mean, I think you mentioned what you were gonna have there. I mean, what I'd wanna see is just, what is the cost now? What is the change overall in the specific numbers, which we don't have to get into today, but it seems like that's what you'll have there. And just maybe a breakdown of what the cost is, and maybe even an example, I don't know if we have this, of data from what the surrounding communities have, just as a reference point for, if we're arguing for a larger increase than people expect, to show them as a reference. So that's what I would want to see it displayed as, just so we can make a decision in January.
I guess I would reference it like I was thinking about that cost to surround. I don't know if there are comps, if you will, for cemeteries, but that would be, I think, a real advantage to have in there. So we can all look at that and see how it compares.
Okay, yeah. And we do have that information, we can share and show some of, both internally here in the city, there's a couple comparables that are privately held, but also some publicly owned cemeteries as well.
Excellent.
Erin has her hand raised.
I do, yeah, sorry, I've got a quick question. Do we offer any sort of sliding scale if there are folks that maybe don't meet a certain income threshold or are requesting assistance? Is that available, especially if we start increasing prices?
That is not something that we do today, but that's a great thing that we could look at. I'm not aware in our comparable search of anybody else who's doing that, but we might look at Metro and see what they're doing with Lofer and some of their cemeteries.
Please take note that Mr. Tim just arrived.
Tim West, the other two.
I didn't want that. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries.
So when you mentioned an enterprise fund, you're kind of like referring it to something like the water fund or the storm fund or the sewer fund or something like that.
Yeah.
Is there any guidance from the budget committee or commission on how those other funds operate?
So we have not specifically received any feedback yet on the cemetery. We've talked internally with finance about how that would operate. It would be a big lift, I think, to get to full enterprise. I think the prices would honestly maybe make us non-competitive
Right.
with some other places. So what we're trying to do, one of the requests that we had when we talked about this with the city manager was they wanted to see it. They wanted to see what it would actually cost. And then we can kind of see what our scale is. And the question I think that we're trying to answer is, we know there's an appropriate level of subsidy, I think, because of the historical and cultural component. What is that subsidy? And what is the appropriate?
And of course, any increase doesn't have to be like boom.
Exactly.
You know, you can step it
Yep.
to get to a certain percentage or something like that might be a little bit more palatable.
And that's one of the other things that we discussed, was looking at it over, maybe a 5-year time span of stepping that increase over time so that we're not doing it all at once.
Great, thank you.
That was my idea too, Ken, to do a step increase so it's not whatever, 25% or 50% all at once. Also, like in the comparables, it'd be interesting to see in terms of the surrounding area fee schedules for other cemeteries, if they do annual increases, as opposed to, like you said, we haven't raised prices in 20 years.
Yes, and that is one of our other goals with this process. When all said and done and we decide on a price and everybody approves that, we will take a resolution to City Commission for that price increase, and it will include an annual increase similar to what happens with water fees and
Right.
fees.
It's been my experience that decision makers on budgets and things like that sometimes get uncomfortable relinquishing. If you say every 3 years we're going to have an annual increase, but we will check in and review every 3rd year or 5 years, whichever the case may be. Sometimes you can sell that, but taking some of that away from them on an annual basis can be challenging. But you might look at both options.
And that was another thing we discussed, and this is an experience that I have from doing solid waste franchises back in the day. When your garbage rates increase, they do a process that's known as the cost of service analysis that looks at profit margins and things like that. I think we would use a similar process here, where we'd be looking at, we have vendor fees that increase, we have a markup on some of those items, and trying to reach a target goal so that every couple of years we're doing that review and making sure that the inflationary increases are appropriate, but also if we need to make any adjustments to markups and vendor fees as well.
A challenging discussion to have considering the issue, but I think it's good that you're bringing it forward and we're moving forward.
And I think it's important to remember, one of the things that we've been thinking about as we've been working through this and looking really at that full cost recovery is, there's a fairness element to it too, of this has been this way for a very long time, and it's, what do we put on the shoulders of people who come in tomorrow?
Sure.
To pay for the cemetery that's been there for 100+ years.
Sure.
That's why I think it's fair to say that there is some level of subsidy that we'd be comfortable with. It's just determining
Right.
what makes sense.
Tom, I missed quite a bit of the conversation, but are you competitive?
I would say there are areas we are competitive. I would say there are many areas in which we are well below market.
Yeah. So what does competitive mean? Are you within 5%? Or are you below 50% or what of the costs?
Yeah. So again, what we'll bring to you in January is a line item detail of all the services, and you'll see that some of our services, some of the things that we offer, and they tend to be the direct vendor markups, things like headstones. Those were pretty comparable to the rest of the market because we can easily change those prices. We have in our resolution, it has a markup, right? So when the vendor changes the price, we just change the price with them. It's the services that take staff time that are particularly well below market. And one of the things that we realized through our comparables and looking at what other cemeteries are doing, there are things that our staff are doing that we don't even charge for. We don't price that into the cost of the service. We don't have a fee for like the setup of a service, and that takes time. It takes a considerable amount of our time to set all those things up. Most other cemeteries, including most other public cemeteries, they charge a fee for those types of things. I think, I kind of wish David was here because he knows this from experience too. One area where we're really non-competitive is liners. We are well below market on liners, to the point where it frustrates some of our partners at times because we're really cheap compared to everybody else. And pricing out private businesses in some cases. So there's this balance of things where some things we are well below market and some things we're in line with. The things that we can more easily control and change over time have stayed in line with market. The things that, staff costs have increased, obviously, I think in the last 20 or so years since the prices have been so those are the areas where I think we really need to focus on that.
So it sounds as though you'll bring to us in January kind of you've heard kind of some of the kinds of questions that the committee has, and I think you'll have some of that involved for us. And so our task in January will be what again?
Ideally, we will, we'll do a full presentation, and it will be a very similar presentation to what you would see at the city commission level. We'll get some feedback on that, and if you feel comfortable at that time making a recommendation on an option, then we'll make that recommendation.
So we have the authority to make that recommendation.
Correct.
That would then go to the council.
Yeah. And then from that, if you
What
feel
we
you
wanted
need
to
more information,
Yeah. Good. So the committee should look forward to that kind of a discussion in January that would put us in that position.
Very good. So for publicly owned cemeteries, have you compared the manpower services that you provide and public provides versus privately owned cemeteries?
Yes.
And that, so you're on par with the other private or publicly owned cemeteries?
Yes and no. If I'm understanding the question correctly, are we in line with what other public cemeteries are doing?
Yeah.
We are below other public cemeteries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Again, it depends on the size. There's, Metro, I think, has 5 cemeteries in their portfolio. They have a substantial number. There's some economies of scale that come from having that many, just different operational folks that can work at different places. There are smaller public cemeteries that just have lower costs than we do. But I would say overall, we're in line with what other ones are doing. But in some of those areas, we don't charge the same types of fees that they do. And so there are areas of revenue that they're making that we don't have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Regarding the check-in fee, sounds like it'll be a good discussion in January to review the overall program. Okay. Next on the agenda is memorial and bench policy collaboration.
So again, I'll just kind of introduce the topic and then we'll have a discussion on kind of how to move forward. So one of the things that we're trying to do here is to really involve PrAC a little more in the development and engagement around policies, particularly policies that affect the public, that affect the public's ability to use parks in different ways. And this is one that we've had a couple things pop up in the past couple months around memorials and benches particularly. The city does not have a current policy, Parks does not have a current policy around memorials or benches. We've kind of, over the years, we've done them on an ad hoc basis. We get a request. The request is considered, it's typically considered by the Parks and Cemetery Manager and escalated, if need be, to the director. And then we decide whether to approve or deny the request. But there's no process for that. It's really just like somebody calls, somebody emails, what happens if somebody has a competing interest. We've actually just recently had a situation where we had to remove a plaque that was placed because the name that was on the plaque is no longer somebody that we should be recognizing. There's just some of the things that have come up and that I have dealt with in other park systems as well. So really kind of want to talk to PrAC about the idea of working together collaboratively with staff on developing a memorial and bench policy and figuring out what makes sense for Oregon City. We are obviously a very historic city. We have a lot of historic things to celebrate. What makes sense for us to place in parks? And then also look at the maintenance of those items. With a policy, we can define, if it's a memorial bench, is there an agreed upon maintenance term? Is there, a shelf life for that, basically? One of the things that, in a previous agency, post-wildfire, we dealt with, trying to deal with the sensitive topic of naming parks and things like that. I think we have a naming policy here at the city, but how do we incorporate some of that work into looking at even just smaller things of like, what goes on a bench? What is allowable on a bench? What do we recognize in park? What is PrAC's role in improving memorials? I think even about like the Cayuse Fire Memorial and those types of things, and what is our role in these things? So I think a policy would be helpful in that, and I would love to work together with you. In the past, the way that I handled this with a different agency was we had a subcommittee of the Parks Commission, and they did some research. They looked at some national parks policy, they looked at state parks, and then looked at a variety of different parks agencies here in the state about, kind of how different people handle it. And then drafted a policy and brought that to staff, and we worked on that together. And then, again, we moved that to a recommendation that went to the Board of Commissioners, and they eventually approved that. So just wanted to float that as an idea. It's something that operationally we've been kind of having a couple of these pop up over the summer and didn't really have a way to handle them. So wanted to engage you and see if you'd be interested in working together on that.
Is there a resource online or that you could email us that shows like the park naming policy or the things that have been established prior? I'd be interested in seeing if we just have a history or a norm that we could follow in kind of reviewing that. I have a lot of experience in writing up state policy, so I'm very well versed in that sort of thing across the state level. But, yeah, I mean, if we have that review, I think that would kind of help guide us in setting that.
Great, yeah, we can definitely do that. And one of the other things I'll send you, I was able to pull some of the resources that I had from the other agency that I worked on this with, and I can share some of those resources as just kind of laying the groundwork of this is what it takes to do a memorial in a national park, a state park, and a local park. Erin has a question?
Aaron has a question, I saw a hand.
Hi, everybody. Did have a quick question. Have we ever accepted like donations or something like that if someone wants to do a memorial park bench, or is there any precedence for like setting up fees for that kind of a thing? Is that something we should also be researching?
That's actually a great question. So we have done it in the past, but it's been very ad hoc. So like an example would be a family came to us, let's say in the 90s, and was like, I want to do a memorial in a certain park. They offered to pay for the memorial, we approved that, it was placed. There was no policy or fee schedule that defined what that was. They just kind of brought us an idea, and the people at the time said, sure, go for it, and they paid for it. That is one of the things that we might look to consider here is almost standardization of memorials as well. What does a memorial on a bench look like? What does it feel like? It ends up being very similar to some of the work that we do in cemetery with these headstones, where you're just kind of creating a general template that people can work with to personalize.
Well, I'd be all for that, setting up the subcommittee, or if that's just something that PrAC as a whole, since we're not a huge place, wanted to take on to make recommendations. I think that's an exciting idea.
I agree. Ken?
Kind of along those lines, I was going to ask if you had a standardized bench design, for example, so that that, then you can kind of dial it in what your costs are going to be and that sort of thing. And there's, I guess realistically, there's probably two places that, a bench might be appropriate. One is in a park by a playground, and then another one might be on a trail or someplace else. So to try to standardize your design for one, because that helps establish your cost, and then figuring out where you will allow such a memorial, I guess would be the other half of that policy.
I love that.
If I'm,
Yeah. Wasn't there a bench recently placed at Old Kanema Park that was a memorial bench?
I think so.
Because I know that the Parks Foundation was accepting money as a nonprofit, helping them collect their funds to purchase that said bench.
Yeah. And that's another thing that we'd like to explore in this too, is how do we interact with
Right.
different nonprofit groups who have interests in parks? How do we get a standardization? So from the operational perspective, it's something we can prepare too. So that's.
Because it seemed like the old Kanema family, I mean, the group that was putting this bench out there, I thought the city gave them some plans that, this is what would be acceptable. I'm not sure. I think we would need to find out who was on that committee and how that was all designed.
That might be a good precedent too.
well, it might not be a bad idea to just send them to the foundation anyway, just kind of develop the policy and then leave it in the foundation's hands and keep it out of the city books, if that's appropriate.
Yeah,
As long as the policy is clear, I mean, that sounds exactly like things that the foundation would want to be involved in.
and I've seen that in a lot of different agencies work really well, and it helps strengthen that relationship between the foundation and the parks team.
Thomas, I noticed from the agenda item title you have here, we talked about benches and designs and all that, but it says memorials and benches. I'm thinking of, I was involved in a number of different memorials in large wildlife areas. They were rock cairns with, not big ones, but rock cairns with memorials, family names, who purchased or did whatever. Is it it's broader than just benches?
Yes, and so those would be some of the options we can consider too. In the previous agency, what we looked at was like the level of service to the parks. So like somebody who did a lot for a specific park and came and they were like,
Sure.
we think this person deserves a memorial. And there was like a criteria, and if they met that criteria, then a memorial would be an appropriate recommendation.
Right.
So yes, that would also be a consideration here, is not just a plaque on a bench, but like a full-size memorial in the park. How would we go about deciding what an appropriate criteria is, and then what is PrAC's role in vetting that information
Right.
before it goes before a city commission for votes?
Trees are another
Trees are another big thing, right?
huge thing, so.
So it sounds as though there are a number of considerations that fall under this title that a committee, group, subgroup, large group, however we go about that, might want to consider as they look at, and again, like we were talking earlier on the cemetery fees, there obviously are other communities that have criteria and stuff that we could look at. I'm a big one to always look at other people's ideas and see what you can take from them and make them better, so that's always a way to approach it.
And along with that, what Steve was just saying, exploring other areas, I was thinking with the Highway 99 project, if they've come up with policies or considerations for benches and plaques and other memorials as part of that design process, maybe they have a policy that they've thought up or a standard design for benches or memorials or something like that, because I feel like that would be a pretty wide open space where you could do a lot of that kind of stuff too.
Exactly, yeah.
All I was going to mention is, do you have a date that you'd like to revisit this on, or just something like an ETA where you'd want our opinion on it by?
So ideally, I view this as us working on this through the winter in kind of a series of meetings where we'll bring you information, we'll discuss it, we'll get some feedback, we'll bring you new information. Ideally, we would have this in front of City Commission for review and approval sometime in the spring, summer.
Okay.
That tends to be our busier time for these types of things. So going into the summer season with a clear policy on how to move forward.
Excellent. Perfect. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, we're just lining up work for ourselves like crazy. That's really good. That is really good. Okay. Next item on the agenda is Pollinator Garden Planting Party.
Fun stuff.
Fun stuff.
More fun stuff.
This was like coming up.
Good thing the bees will be away by the time.
Yes, they won't be there when we play. So just brief update on the project itself. If you go by the pool, you'll see that the rock wall is nearly finished. They've been working on it throughout the week and have got most of the stones in place. They're just doing some finish work right now. They actually picked up the plants from Xerxes Society today. So those are now in our hands and back at the shop. So we're getting ready for kind of the next phase, which is actually putting those plants in the ground. They need to be planted by November 30th. And so we understand that there's, holidays and everything involved in that. But we did want to offer an opportunity for PrAC to set kind of a date for a volunteer opportunity to come out and if you're interested. We would open that up as well to the public, so the public can come and participate. But just wanted to open that discussion and see if there's any dates that work for everybody. Weekends would be fine, during the week would be fine, whatever works best.
Anyone have any thoughts about, it's got to be by November 30th.
November 30th is when the plants have to be in the ground.
Quick question, so how much support do you anticipate from staff?
So staff will be able to support the event.
With like tools and fertilizer and stuff, or
Yes.
or do we need, because that's important, and then how many staff people do you think? But that's, I don't need to know all that, I just wanted to get an idea if you're just gonna throw out the plants, or are they gonna be laid out and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so ideally, we've been working with Hannah, who you saw in a presentation recently. We've been working with her on Ivy League, and what we do is we bring the tools. We've got a lot of the hand tools to do this, so we just bring those out to the site. The plants will be laid out. We'll have at least kind of 2 lead workers on site that day, probably me and Brandon, to help define where the specific species of plants go according to the planting plan, and then additional staff will be given the opportunity to, especially if it's on the weekend. I know some have expressed
I'll be there.
interest in being there. So we'll have some staff on hand to help.
Nice,
Guide.
okay. Well, I'd like to, why don't we just say we want to do it before the 23rd, so the 23rd would be the last Saturday possible, and I'd propose maybe the 9th or the 16th.
Okay, I think that's great. Anybody else?
I think there's already something going on the 9th, I believe, the Singer Creek Park
Oh,
Community
yeah.
Cleanup.
Yeah, good call, okay.
Good one, Aaron.
And for what it's worth, I'm out of town on the 16th, but
Yeah, I am as well, but that doesn't mean
23rd
we
looks
could.
good to me.
16th looks good.
23rd.
23rd.
23rd works, yeah.
23rd.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me confirm that with Hannah tomorrow. We'll make sure that we've got that in the volunteer calendar. We don't have any other conflicts, and then we'll send out an email to everybody to confirm.
So if that doesn't work for her, should we come up with a backup or not?
I think we should, just in case. I think the 16th would be a good backup for
16th.
Okay.
that works for everybody else.
Weekdays are not possible.
Weekdays are possible. It's entirely up to you.
When does daylight savings time kicks in? Does that affect it
It's
much?
the first weekend in November.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking it's gonna get dark really soon, or dark early pretty soon.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say 23rd and 16th. I think weekend would allow more people from the public to come as well.
Agreed.
Yeah, the only weekday would be maybe a Friday that school's out, type of thing, but that's a lot of, trying to figure that out when that is.
Logistics of that would be difficult.
Yeah, so let's just go with a Saturday, I think.
Sounds like a Saturday would be most appropriate.
That's tomorrow.
Wear your layers,
Oh, is it tomorrow
your
the
long
school's-
sleeve, and it's gonna be
Who
chilly.
wants to avoid a wet soccer game?
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll float the 23rd as first choice and 16th as second choice.
As a backup, okay, perfect.
And I will share that with Hannah tomorrow, and we'll get some guidance out to you shortly after.
Perfect.
Looking forward to it. I'm really excited about this project. The wall looks really good. Really excited about that. We're gonna bring in the soil next.
I want to drive by there and look at it again. the concept of it, it turned out much different than I thought it was gonna be when we did that tour. Another good reason to do tours occasionally, so you get a much
Yeah.
better idea of what we're doing. So, excellent, thank you. Okay. All right, now a very important part of our business is the December committee interview details.
And I wasn't here last year, so I don't know much about this process. So I'm gonna let Corey take the wheel on this.
I'm happy to.
How this works.
So our window for the PrAC applications closing
The 27th.
this 27th. I was like, what did I tell you guys? Thanks, Joey. So after that, we would need probably a week and a half or so, because I then call all of the candidates, arrange the interviews, what works for them. So I would say that we would want to look at a date, and I know it's holiday season and whatnot, but last year we did it the second week in December, and that seems to work fairly well. Not all PrAC members have to be there. I don't know if it's a thing that actually needs a quorum. You know, we
We haven't
basically,
always had a quorum in the past.
I didn't think so.
No.
And it's really the mayor that is appointing these people at the end of the
Right.
day.
It's just our recommendation officially.
Correct, yeah. So, again, looking at a date and seeing what might work for the majority of us within those first couple weeks of December.
And I would say December 12th, but the second Thursday is probably the best. Give it some time before Thanksgiving and still 2 weeks before Christmas. so-
Sure.
Yeah,
And those interviews would be held here, so.
right.
How many do you normally get? As someone who was interviewed last year, I just don't know.
Oh, wow. So last
room only.
year, yeah, oh my gosh, like out the door, just major lines.
40, 50.
Last year,
So honored.
last year it was, and last year was actually my first full round of it all. And there was, I believe, eight candidates.
And 2 positions.
And 2 positions. This year we have 3 positions, potentially 4 with our youth member seat. So, yeah, I would say I haven't seen any. The city recorder is typically the one that sends me the applications, and then I review them, look at their neighborhood, make sure that they meet the criteria, and then get in touch with them. And I have not seen any applications come through so far. So,
3 open seats, but does mine have to be from outside of the city limits?
no, it does not.
Okay.
Yeah, it does not.
You can only have one on PrAC, but it doesn't necessarily have to be one.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
So who's term limited off?
Me, Steve, and Ken, I think.
Are you term limited off, or you just have to reapply?
You can
You
reapply.
reapply, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
I just, because.
Yeah, you would
I've
all be
already
eligible to
served 2 in
reapply
a row.
at this point.
Okay.
And then did we decide what we're going to do in November for a meeting?
We will not have a meeting in November at all.
We haven't had one, I don't think.
No,
been a while.
because I think it
Right.
falls typically on.
Falls on Thanksgiving,
Thanksgiving.
but do we, and there's nothing pressing, there's no real reason to meet in November then?
No.
Our schedule shows that we will cancel that one.
I guess I'd go with Timothy and say the 12th, sounds good.
December 12th?
Does that work for people? That works for you, Aaron?
Yep, thanks.
Okay,
I will send out more details and a confirmation of that to you guys in the next couple of weeks.
So we're gonna be in New York the first week of December, but I think we come back on the 11th, if I remember right. So that's
So you'll be
perfect.
tired, but,
Tired but present.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
okay. Anything else on that? Interviews, yeah, I encourage all that can participate to do so. It's a good process, and it's important that, you know, we have a broad perspective on who is going to be on the committee. So I would encourage everyone to participate if they can.
Yeah, it's great. And I can also send out the questions that we asked candidates last year and see if we have any new question ideas, see what makes sense. We can review those and I'll run things through the city recorder and make sure that we can adapt those as we see fit.
And then, as you said, Aaron, ultimately, excuse me, Corey, as you said, ultimately, everything is approved by the mayor, so.
Correct, yeah. Like
Or
Joey had
just be a
mentioned, this is just a recommendation,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think most cases, I think she's followed.
I don't know of a scenario where she has.
I don't know where she would go from us.
Everyone from Prac has been fine.
Yeah. Okay, good. Anything more on the committee interviews? Okay. So the next portion of our agenda is our member reports. I know of a couple, but I'll wait before we get to those. Tim?
Yes, I volunteered with the Ivy Pull over at the Waterford Park. There was about a dozen people that showed up and got quite a bit done, pulling a lot of ivy down. I was very impressed with the ROTC. I'd expect a whole bunch of strapping young men, but they were all women. So they got a lot of work done, and I thought it was very good, very well organized. And they could always use more people. I know that they reached out to the Chamber of Commerce and got only one volunteer down there, and there's a couple other people out that joined the job there, but it was very good and got a lot done.
Awesome.
Great.
Anyone else here? Ken?
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it. Oh, I just want to give a shout out, as I almost do every month, to the pool. I recently had to attend 2 different birthday parties at the pool, and it's just a cool thing that they do there that I learned of last month when we did the tour over there with Melissa and her team. And just a shout out to everything that they set up. It's chaos, but they do it extremely well. So just
Excellent.
Organized chaos.
Yeah.
Ken?
Okay, so I understand that our report to the commission from the PRAC is coming up or due, and probably in November, and it sounds like I'm the one that has to do it because Steve's going to be out of town. And I think I talked about this a little bit last year, but if last year's report was really was a departmental report that was just kind of, it didn't really involve PRAC. And so I'm struggling a little bit because I don't feel like PRAC has been really involved in enough to really report on. And so I appreciate actually even these future agenda items, because they also are things that PRAC can actually sink their teeth in. And
Exactly.
along with that, there are a couple other things that I know are coming up, but for example, the systems development fees, methodology and fee is coming up, but included in that methodology is a capital improvement program that we've never, to my knowledge, seen. I have no clue what is going to go into this thing that the fees are going to be based on. And so I find it real hard for us to go out or for me, I won't speak for the rest of us, but for me personally to go out and talk knowledgeable about anything involving the new master plan, the CIP, potential projects, funding, anything, because we've not been involved. So I guess what I'm suggesting is I would like to, if possible, come up with a few more projects that PRAC can actually work on, that I can actually say, hey, this is what we want to work on next year. And with the blessing of the commission, they would say, hey, yeah, go forth and bring us back a recommendation. A couple of other things, I know that the park master plan does have to go through it's a periodic review, or the comp plan goes through a periodic review, and then the new master plan gets kind of mixed into that, and then we have a thing. But before that happens, I would like to see some things like potentially design standards. And I don't mean, we're going to use X playground equipment or how many tennis courts, but it's, so people have an idea of what would typically be involved in a park. If you live here and we say we're going to put a park and it's a 5-acre site, what can you expect? Or what can you, what won't you have to worry about? So I mean, there's both. In a perfect world, you always put the park in first and people move in and say, well, that's great. But I've had some experience in trying to put parks within existing neighborhoods, and you start talking about ball fields or skate parks or pickleball, anything, you name it. Somebody's going to say, well, we want a park, we just don't want a park that people are going to come to. And so, I mean, it's just fair to have an expectation of what would typically kind of go into these sites of different sizes. And that's what I mean by design standards. I mean, whether it's a red surface or that's not what we're trying to get into, but what would be kind of the normal things. And those are the types of things that should be in a comprehensive plan.
Yes.
Another one, the CIP itself, it would be great if we could help prioritize based on what we know, like a 5-year snapshot of logical or likely funding sources, those types of things, so that we could say, hey, yeah, these are the projects that we would like to see. In that 5-year, the CIP that the SDCs are based on, and of course I'm getting into acronyms, so I apologize, but I think we all know what those are. But, you might have a 20-year plan, but you can only focus on really what you can see possibly, and then forecasting for economic reasons what's available in the next 3 to 5 years. So those are the types of things that I think that would be real helpful, and for me, be exciting to be a part of. I mean, I think that's kind of one of the main reasons that I want to be here. We're the ones that take our kids or grandkids and stuff to the parks, so staff is there all the time, but they're looking at them in a different way. And I think that's just something that we would love to take under consideration.
So Ken, to kind of bring it back to your member report, which was really started with, you've got a report to give since I'm going to be out of town.
Right.
And I think what I'm hearing you suggest is that while there's certainly some things that we would need to present, kind of like we did last year, some of the parts and pieces, you'd like to take on an approach that says, here's the kind of things that we think we could either get involved with or that we might be part of for the future. So look at it a little more as a futuring exercise for the commission to give us then the nod, if you will. Here's a list of things. Now, if they reach out and go, no, you can't do that one, that's fine. But at least if we had a little list like that you presented, put in front of them, didn't have to be all inclusive, it isn't everything that we're going to do, but these are some things that we could be involved with as a committee. We think we have value added from the members on the committee, and commission, what do you think? These are the kind of things that would make that report a little more our own, or at least it'd make it a joint report, which is really what it's supposed to be.
Right.
And I didn't have that available to me last year, so I just pretty much did the pro forma report. So
Yeah, and that's again, I'm kind of asking or searching for a little bit of advice from the rest of the committee to see if that's something that's you guys want to deal with or not, or.
Because, we could get ourselves, the way we're rolling through work here this evening, we might watch out what we wish for. You put that list out there and you go, sure, that'd be great, take on this one, this one, this one. But that would be a new challenge for us as a committee, and I think it'd be welcomed by everybody around this table. So any thoughts of things we might?
I have another idea about the things that we might get involved in. And here you spent a whole meeting for PrAC up at the pool. And I would like to see some kind of direction from the park board to say, all right, we're going to head in this direction, or we're going to go in that direction. We're going to get rid of that one, we're going to build another one. We're going to go ahead and build that one up and do something, or we're going to go for a pool district. And that is something that it'd be great for this group to be behind, to go ahead and push. But we need direction from the person that's sitting in your chair there.
Well, I mean, we need direction from the commission. I think more important, because if we don't have their blessing, then,
Yeah.
you know, so.
If they're not on board, then that's difficult.
Right, but it's something that every single city commissioner that's running for office today
Sure.
is speaking about.
Absolutely.
And it'd be great to see what this group could help them with.
Sounds like it's an item we could include in the list, if you will, of consideration for the committee to work on.
And I would view that as an item, I'm just gonna call it a master plan, like a pool master planning effort, maybe, or a pool planning effort, just as an item. If you
Right.
have any other suggestions for the
Right.
title of that, let me know.
Good idea.
Erin, did you unraise your hand?
I did. I was just sharing the sentiment that I agree in that I'd like to see us be more active in the coming year, whether it's creating that standardization or that, you know, what can you expect from a new park, or it's a pool master plan or something like that, but having not an agenda, but at least some areas of interest where PRAC says we are meant to be the voice of the community to help guide these things. Here's where we'd like to plug in with your blessing. I'm all for doing that. I think that's a great way to approach the report, especially because I agree we don't have too terrible much to share for this year, although I think our pollinator garden is a big win too.
Absolutely.
So I'm just on board with what was shared.
Great.
I mean, so I would just suggest that we start with the cemetery fees, the park design standards, memorial bench policy, a 5-year CIP, a pool look of whatever, however we want to call that. But, you know, ways to implement the master plan. But, and also, things that are lacking, you know, so the master plan's come and gone, but what's it missing? What can we do before it gets adopted into the comp plan? What can we do to kind of enhance that?
Yeah.
Before we go for that meeting, would everybody be comfortable if we compiled a list of some of these options?
I'd
and
appreciate
send
it.
that out
Certainly, that'd be very helpful.
for review, feedback.
Sure.
That way, you know, if you think of something between now and then, we have a way of communicating.
Well, and your ear is going to be the ground as you're developing this list too. If you hear something that obviously we don't want to send kin to the wolves either, if there's something on the list that we already know, that we know is not.
If there's what are you talking about? Yeah, let me know.
I don't want to run him out of the room or get the hook, but, so if you know anything that would work that way, but I think it'd be very helpful. It's easy for me to say, I'm giving the report, but.
Right.
What date is that report going to be given? Do we have that?
I think we are planning on the 20th.
Oh, November.
November 20th.
November 20th?
Yep.
Okay.
And is that just Ken should go, or is that somewhere where we could also go?
Well, if we're asking for kind of we're almost talking about a little bit of a reset for the committee, I think it'd be great to have some other members.
Yeah.
I think it would be fantastic to get as many members there to sit in a row in the line and show the solidarity. It's easy for me to say, I'm going to be gone again, but I would certainly say that certainly shows.
We'll wear our crown of thorns.
There you go. Well, I mean, it is kind of a reset. We're kind of this is a new start. So the more of us can show up there and sit in the audience, and they can't ignore us that way. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Corey, could you put that on our calendars? Is
You
there a way to
bet.
send that out so we can have it on our calendars?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other member reports at this point?
as a citizen reporting from this committee, we're going to go back to the poison oak in, which park is that?
Park Place?
Park Place?
Park Place. So recently I was out at a state park and they had poison oak. It was wonderful to see this time of year the poison oak because it changes such a beautiful color, and to see it intermixed with the English ivy growing up the trees. And I'm thinking about those ivy poles and wondering, oh my God, how do you do that? You know, that would, and so I don't know if we're having that problem over at Park Place Park or not, if it's mixed with the ivy. But they had wonderful signage.
Yes.
And, you know, pictures of what the poison ivy looks like, but also frequently along the path, little reminders to stay on the path because they kept the poison oak away from the path a little bit. You had to be a little careful, you know, in the Frisbee area, because if your Frisbee got over there and the poison, one guy was climbing through the bushes to get it, and he said, yeah, he knew that what he was doing, and so we said, okay, just don't come
Those
near us.
discs are expensive.
But just want to make sure that, you know, to find out what's being done now, what kind of signage is out there. I haven't had a chance to go see, and is there going to be some spraying and when that might happen?
Yeah, so we have already done a spot spray on the poison oak that's directly adjacent to the trail. That happened. Our goal is here in the kind of fall winter months as the rains come and the ground starts to loosen up. We'll do a more mechanical removal by actually going in and digging out the roots. We've been waiting for the soil to loosen up so that you can really get all that root ball out. And again, we'll do that around kind of the perimeter of the trail. There is signage out there currently. The trail is closed, so the signage really focuses on that. We did recommend to the group as they were constructing the trail that they look into some of those kind of warning, poison oaks, caution, stay on trail kind of signage, but that wasn't accomplished. So it is something that we could do as we move forward, and definitely something we're interested in. At current, the trail is closed until we do that mechanical removal, and then we'll do another spot spray in the spring.
And so far, is that the only park that we have that's having a problem with the poison oak?
I would say that poison oak is native to Oregon and in all oak woodlands. So I know we do have some in Waterboard. So Tim, you probably saw this at the Ivy Pole. They had the Technu.
Yes.
And they, gave instruction. The city staff gave instruction on how to do pre-application and post-application in case of exposure. So that's how the city handles it, and that's how we'll do it.
Are you, let me understand, so are you using the native plant argument as a reason to not spray it in the park, or is that?
No, it's just that, poison oak exists in parks. Yeah,
clearly.
Yeah.
But I mean, do you have an overall policy of, geez, we like native plants and we don't like poison oak, or we, because I get it when it's in a confined area or you can eradicate it from a trail, but, dogs do get off leash. There's just a certain, kids get off leash, so keeping a kid on a trail, and I've got two that I have to try to trek through the parks, and keeping them straight, it's hard. And even in that specific trail, there was that big overhanging batch of it as well. So, I guess I would like to say that it's more than just, we're going to go after it for 50 feet off the trail or whatever. And I get that. I've dealt with it in both. And then people come back and complain, well, was your dog on a leash? Well, no. Well, then it's not our fault. Well, it's still, regardless, the leaves don't stay, when they blow off here in the next couple of weeks, they're going to be mixed up with your guys picking them up. So it's just normal for that to spread everywhere. So I guess I would like to see a fairly aggressive, if, within budget and everything else, to just kind of keep it away from visible. It's beautiful, but you don't want to be near it.
Yeah, and that's our goal here at Park Place. We don't have any other identified areas currently where that's an issue that people are currently interacting with. The only other park that I'm aware of that has poison oak is at Waterboard. And that's kind of in the often natural areas, not when people report it, we go take
Go
care
get
of
it.
it.
Good.
When it happens, yeah. The only reason I said that it's native is because
Oh, yeah, no,
it exists in parks. And
Yeah, no,
not
it's,
everywhere.
you know, it's good terroir, is that the
Yes.
word? So if you see poison oak and fir, it's a great place to plant grapes.
Yep.
Okay. I have an item, several of us in the room will remember this. We met, I believe it was on October 9th with the Natural Resource Committee. A number of us did, Tim, Joyce, Emily, Aaron, Ken, and myself. I don't think I missed anybody, did I? I think that was everybody that was there. We had a couple items on our agenda that we discussed. One of which was the McLaughlin Boulevard Enhancement Project update. And before you see a paragraph that was sent to us. As I understand it, this paragraph, we discussed what recommendations were needed to be made to the consultant regarding specifically the issue of the vegetation, riparian vegetation, if you will, associated with the boulevard overhang. And if any of you haven't seen that rendering, it is if that gets put in place, I hope I'm still around here to see that. It is impressive waterfront walkway that they're planning to put in there. But as you can see from this paragraph, you know, we asked for some consideration or recommendations, at least to take into consideration the riparian vegetation and things that were associated with the bank there. It's pretty limited, as most of you are familiar with that know, and that's the reason we talked about this. I guess what we really need in a general sense, I'm not looking for a vote on this because we're just in reports, but this is kind of where we ended up, if you will, and I just wanted to see if there were any concerns or issues with recommending this to go forward along with the Natural Resources Committee to the consultant. They're still a long ways away from any kind of, they've emphasized several times that we're still in the very early phases of it. And so this was really just to get kind of a placeholder, if you will, for things. And you'll notice there's, you know, we've got vegetation, wildlife, fisheries, so on and so forth. So anybody got any thoughts or ideas on this part?
I think it's just too early to go ahead and make any judgment calls on that because they don't even know where the footprint of the base of that tower is going to be yet.
Right.
So
I think this will just help. We can. This is kind of our input, if you will, initially. I'm sure there'll be other opportunities to probably be involved and maybe even have some more joint committee meetings that we could do because that was kind of that was kind of fun. It was interesting to watch another committee operate. And hear kind of what they're involved with. They were doing lots of things too. The second part of our meeting dealt with the what I'll call a public tree inventory and tree canopy policy. And Joyce, help me if I'm wrong, or anybody help me if I'm wrong there. They had what they called a draft OC canopy letter, a fairly long letter,
Yes.
lots of input through the letter. Very good stuff. There was great stuff there. We were asked to look at it and basically ask if we would be interested in ultimately doing, I guess you would say, a joint submission of that letter to the city commission.
And so we decided not that letter, but the topics were
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah, I think I made the comment, I hope tactfully, that the letter itself as it currently sits is too big, in my opinion, this is my opinion, too big a letter to be useful to decision makers. You've got to get it down with the key elements. And I'm sure that other people will be working on that. And I gathered what we will be given is the opportunity to look at that somewhere down the road. And so I guess, Thomas, all I would suggest is that I think I share the opinion of committee members that were interested in participating, working with the Natural Resource Committee on that. But somewhere down the road, get together or bring to us something we can work with a little bit, frankly, a little bit more concise, because as it sits there right now, it'd be very hard to to?
We did get a copy of it.
Did we?
Yes.
Okay. and
It took me a while to go
Okay.
back and find it, and.
You know,
Was it the big letter?
who sent it?
Letter, yeah.
Who sent it? Just so I
It
can
was
find it.
sent, it was the Natural Resources Committee agenda on October 9th. It was an attachment.
Attachment, okay.
Okay, perfect.
So I think we take a quick look at that document, but I think it would be helpful from, I think, a committee standpoint if we could boil that down just a little bit more before we try to bite into it, because,
But I know they would like it sooner rather than later.
yes. Aaron, excuse me.
I think they were going to send that electronically, because I know that was one that,
It turns out
I
that
talked
they
with,
had
what was her name again, that ran that?
Samantha Wolf.
Samantha, yeah, your friend, I remember that. Okay, so I was talking a little bit with Samantha, and I think there's some kind of easier just letter structuring things we can do to cut that down that I think would even make it more, it would make it easier for even PrAC to look at and then make more recommendations, but I think it needs a first pass before we take it through committee. So is there a way to ask them to send that electronically, like in an editable file?
It was an attachment to their agenda, and it's on the city website too. So it's, the letter is there.
Corey, could you, obviously, we're searching. We're all looking. We're looking everywhere for this thing, and you and I have already had the whole day of me not finding anything. Could you possibly take it and put it in just something directly to members?
Yeah, if I know where this letter lives, I will gladly do that.
I can get you a copy.
If there's a way to connect us with Samantha, that would be helpful too. And I hear you, I'm looking for like a Word document that we could like edit and track changes together on, which I doubt is available on the website. It's probably a PDF or something like that.
Probably is.
I have a Word version.
You have a Word version? Okay. And Aaron, I think I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I remember you saying you have some skills in this area?
A little bit, it's a
That
bit
you
of my
might
bread
have
and butter,
mentioned,
so I'm happy to help.
mentioned in the meeting that you might be able to help with. I think that would be fantastic, because I think if we can get that down to something that we can, chew into, then we can certainly, and I would be interested in doing something.
Yeah, it is in PDF form,
Yeah,
easy to download.
yeah.
Yeah,
They have
just
a,
not easy to edit. So if I could just kind of get connected with Samantha and work on a joint piece, I think we can get something in front of PrAC that we could digest a little bit more easily.
Which then is also something that we could put on the list of something that we want to be involved in, that we're going to coordinate with natural resources, which is just one more thing that we, and that, if we did all of the 6 or 7 things we talked about, and given all of the other things, that's a worthy year's worth of work that I would be, excited to actually participate in, so.
So I think that's a pretty good overview of the meeting. If anybody's got anything else to add with regard to, what we did there, but I think that was pretty close.
Yeah,
It's quite the McLaughlin project, I had not seen anything associated with it before. And it certainly, gosh, it would be exciting to see that if we could, that would put Oregon City on a lot of maps. If you could put that walkway in there, that would be.
The price tag was a little scary, but when you go walk on, once you get out onto something like that, nobody's going, gee, I wonder how much this cost. It's usually something pretty exciting, and
You might have to get over maybe some fear of heights. It was a bit open underneath,
I think
but,
those glass bridges that crack when you walk on them, that'd be perfect.
so, anyway, I was glad to have the opportunity to sit down, and that was a good way to utilize our time, because you had both committees there, so that really was helpful.
Because it was a long presentation.
Yes, it was. Okay, any other member reports? Great. Next scheduled meeting, I guess, would be the,
December 12th.
yeah. Number 12?
Except for the November 20th. Those of us who are gonna
The
be
commission
there.
meeting.
It's not scheduled, but it'd be nice to have
Yeah,
a bunch of
Yes.
us there.
yes, it would be.
And I'll shoot to get that added to the agenda.
Okay.
And then November 23rd, hopefully, is the planting.
Tom, did I miss an announcement? Are you the new director of parks?
No decision has been made yet.
Yeah, are they still interviewing?
We've been going through the interview process. The last stage that we just moved through was the open house, which was last Thursday.
Last Thursday.
And how many candidates are making it to this point?
2 candidates made it to that.
Cool.
So that decision is still in progress.
Excellent discussion this evening. And again, I really do view this as we've got an opportunity for a new reset, new start, if you want to call it that, to get us kind of moving. I'm excited about Ken's presentation. It's a whole different thing. Well, yeah, I don't have to give it, but the bottom line is, I think we may surprise the city commission. They've never, I don't think, seen that kind of a presentation from their Parks and Rec committee. So, we'll stir a little bit up there, and I kind of like doing that. So, anyway, is there anything else for this evening, or I'll adjourn us?
Nope.
Okay,
We're all good?
meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Aaron. I did better on the hand.
Oh,
Good night, Erin.
Egypt, 9th to the 27th.